and I'm the independent chair of the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service Culture Review. I'm leading a team which includes 2 other barristers who are here today, Charlene Ashiru and Gethin Thomas. And we're also being helped by some organisational culture experts in my service, and is here to listen and to learn about the service and the experiences of people who work in it or who come into contact with it now and in the past. This is your opportunity to have your say, and we want to hear from you. Please tell us about the things that have happened, what works well, what you don't like, what you'd like to change. Your input will make a big difference to the review, the recommendations we make, and how the service could be better in the future. You can talk to us face-to-face or remotely. You can email us, and later in the summer we're going to send out a questionnaire, and we're also going to run some online focus groups. If you want to get in touch with us, please use our completely private email address. You can find the email address on the review's website, but I'm going to say it now if you want to try and write it down. It's swfrsreview@gmail.com. Now, the only people who have access to that account are the members of the review team. You can use that email address to tell us your thoughts in writing, or to set up a time to talk to us, whether in person or remotely. Now, we understand that sometimes it's hard to speak up, but we really encourage you to come forward. We appreciate that some of you will feel the need to speak to us in confidence, and that can be arranged, subject to some of our legal obligations. Now, if you need to know more about how to speak to us in confidence, then you can read about it on the review's website, where we've got a confidentiality and privacy notice. But we will always do our best to help you feel safe when you're talking to us. This is our first visit to Wales for the review, but we'll be coming again, so there will be other opportunities to talk to us over the next few months. We'll be visiting fire stations, and we plan to be back in these offices in the centre of Cardiff as well. We know that some of you will find it easier to speak to us remotely rather than in person, and we're very happy to set up links so that you can do that. We plan to provide our report on the review at the end of this year. So please help us to make this report the one that the service and your community deserve by coming forward and sharing your experiences and views with us. I'm going to hand over to Thomas now so that he can give you all of this information in Welsh. Thank you very much.
Thomas Lewis dwi o gyfreithwyr Blake Morgan sydd yn gweithredu ar ran gwasanaeth tân ac achub De Cymru. Hoffwn gyflwyno y bargyfreithiwr Fenella Morris, cwnsler y Brenin. Mae'r gwasanaeth tân wedi penodi Fenella yn gydeirydd ar yr adolygiad diwylliant annibynnol. Mae Fenella yn arwain y tîm ehangach ar y adolygiad sydd yn cynnwys 2 bargyfreithiwr arall, Charlene Ashiru a Gethin Thomas, yn ogystal â arbenigwyr diwylliant sefydliadol o gwmni o'r enw Walking the Talk. Mae'r adolygiad yn gwbl annibynnol i'r gwasanaeth tân, ac mae'r adolygiad yma i wrando a dysgu am phrofiadau pobl sy'n gweithio yn y gwasanaeth neu sydd wedi dod mewn i gysylltiad â'r gwasanaeth. Dyma eich cyfle i ddweud eich dweud, ac mae'r tîm eisiau clywed gennych. Dwedwch wrth y tîm am beth sydd wedi digwydd, beth sy'n gweithio'n dda, a'r hyn nad ydych yn ei hoffi neu'r hoffech chi newid. Bydd eich mewnbwn yn gwneud gwahaniaeth mawr i'r adolygiad ac i'r argymellion a gwneir gan yr adolygiad, a fydd yn y pen draw yn lliwio sut y gallai'r gwasanaeth fod yn well yn y dyfodol. Gallwch siarad ar thîm y adolygiad wyneb yn wyneb neu yn rheithiol. Gallwch anfon e-bost i'r tîm, ac yn ddiweddarach yn yr haf, bydd y tîm yn anfon holiadur allan ac yn cynnal grwpiau ffocws ar-lein. Os hoffech gysylltu â'r tîm, defnyddiwch cyfri e-bost preifat y tîm, fel a ddylledwyd allan gan Fenelon gynt, ond unwaith eto swfrsreview@gmail.com. Yr unig bobl sydd â mynediad i'r cyfrif hwnnw yw aelodau'r tîm yr adolygiad. Gallwch ddefnyddio'r e-bost i ddweud eich barn yn ysgrifenedig neu drefnu amser i siarad â'r tîm. Mae'r tîm yn deall bod hi'n anodd codi llais weithiau, ond maent yn eich aneb i gymryd rhan. Maent yn gwerthfawrogi bydd angen i rai ohonoch siarad yn hwn gyfrinachol, ac eich trefnu hynny yn y model a rhywmedigaethau cyfreithiol y tîm. Os oes angen i chi wybod mwy am sut i siarad â'r tîm yn gyfrinachol, gallwch ddarllen amdano ar wefan yr adolygiad. Bydd y tîm yn gwneud ei gorau glas i'ch helpu i deimlo'n ddiogel wrth siarad gyda nhw. Dyma ymweliad cyntaf tîm yr adolygiad a Chymru, ond bydd y tîm yn ymweld eto. Bydd y tîm yn ymweld ag orsafodd tân yn yr ardal, ac maent yn bwriadu bod yn ôl yn y swyddwydd yma hefyd. Gwyddai'r tîm y bydd rhai ohonoch yn ei chael i'n haws siarad â'r tîm o bell yn hytrach na wyneb yn wyneb. Mae'r tîm yn mwy nag hapus i wneud hyn. Bwriad yr adolygiad yw i darparu ei adroddiad erbyn diwedd y flwyddyn. Mae'r tîm yn gofyn i chi helpu nhw drwy ddod ymlaen a rhannu'ch profiadau a'ch safbwyntiau gyda'r tîm mwyn sicrhau fod yr adolygiad.
So we've got some time for a few questions and answers now, and I'm going to hope that Charlene and Gethin can let me know what they are.
Thank you. So we have a few questions coming in, Fenella. The first two are linked, so I'll ask those together. The question is surrounding the contents of the report and whether the cultural review team will decide the contents of the report or whether management will have an input into that, and also whether the full contents of the report will be public or whether the service will have an input into what parts of the report become public.
So that's a really important question, and we're able to answer it really, really clearly. If you look in our terms of reference, it's absolutely clear that this report will be public, and there's no provision for a separate private report that might be internal to the service. The only author of the report ultimately is me, and the only people who will be helping me write that report are Charlene, Gethin and the culture experts at Walking the Talk. Now obviously we will be talking to people across the service and people who come into the service, but the decision maker is me, and it's me who will write the report.
The next question that's come through is, what's the time period for discussing issues?
Well, that's another excellent question, and we understand that lots of people are very keen to hear how we're going to get on with things. So our plan at the moment is to spend today and tomorrow here in Wales, and that's going to help us understand more about the service and think more about the work that we want to do. We're going to be coming again over the course of the summer on quite a few occasions where either we're going to make appointments in advance to see people or otherwise give people other chances to speak to us so that we can interview them. The other thing that's going to happen over the summer is the survey or questionnaire which I mentioned earlier, and also probably in September we're going to run some focus groups, and so we hope that by autumn time we'll have gathered the information that we need, and then it will be for me to look at it all, think about it all, work out what my conclusions are, and start writing the report. And the plan that I'm committed to is publishing the report at the end of this year. So obviously at the moment I don't know exactly how much work there is to do, but I'm very much committed to that plan, and that's the timescale that we have. So if you haven't been able to make time to speak to us today, for example, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. There are going to be lots and lots of other occasions when you can speak to us, and you could come and speak to us in person at these offices in Cardiff, which are away from the service, or you can speak to us remotely. You can speak to us remotely when we're back in offices in London, or when we're down here and there happens to be a space in our schedule. And of course, you're always very welcome just to email us with your views as well, although talking to people is always fantastic and you can get a really great picture. So those are our plans. Lots of things happening over the summer and a plan for a final report at the end of the year. Any more questions?
Yes, Fidela. So the next question, as they will still know the password.
Right. So the Gmail account was set up for us, but since it's been set up, we have changed the passwords of the review team. And so there is absolutely nothing to be concerned about in terms of other. And I would say that I'm really pleased that people have started using the email account to communicate with us. And as far as I can see, you know, from my perspective, I feel it's working really well. We've been able to have dialogue with people already, and I'm really, really pleased with the way. And I can absolutely reassure you that it's only us who has access to that account. Yes, anything that you have to say which is about the service and its culture is something that we are keen to hear about. We don't want you to think that something is too small. We don't want you to think that something is too big. We want to hear, because we can only do our work and we can only understand the service, what's good about it, what's not so good, what's middling, if only they did it that way. All of those thoughts are important to us. And within that, we're also very keen to hear if you say, well, I found, you know, this happened to me and it didn't make sense. I found this happened to me and actually I thought it was great. Or you may say, all of these things happening to other people and I thought it was really good. Or maybe next time we have a group thing, it could be this way. But also we're interested to hear about more institutional concerns. You might say, oh, well, we think the way that things are structured is not very helpful and that causes problems, or maybe we could structure it in a different way. So things that are both individual or personal and things about the organisation, they're all things that we're interested in. And we don't want you to sort of hold back and think, oh, you know, they won't be interested in that. You know, the one thing that we can say is that we're really, really interested. We really want to hear, we really want to learn, and we want to understand as much as we can so that I can produce a really useful report, because in the end, that's what I'm doing. It's not a report just to sort of sit on a dusty shelf. It's a report that I really want to make a difference to the service and the community around it going forward.
Vanilla, there's a comment here about having reservations about coming forward. So what if people have reservations about coming forward?
Well, we absolutely understand why somebody would have reservations or concerns, hesitation. You know, there are a host of reasons, and we really, really understand those feelings. But what we would say is that we want to make things as comfortable for you as possible. Now, the first thing is that, as I've explained, ultimately the report will be public. And that means that I need to make a public statement about my conclusions about the service. However, it's also true that we understand that some people will have things to say that are very sensitive, very personal, and that they don't feel able to agree to those things going public. So my first commitment is to a public report, a comprehensive report, and a report that I have investigated as thoroughly as possible. So if you come forward and feel able to speak to me or members of the team openly, then of course I'm going to be able to pursue what you tell me and look into it further because you've told it to me openly. However, I also really, really understand that there are some things that are just too difficult and that you may feel the need to talk to me in confidence about them. Now, those things we've thought about, and you'll see that we've got quite a detailed privacy and confidentiality notice attached to the terms of reference of the review on the website. Now, if you want to see all the detail of that, you're going to need to go there. I can't read it all out now. But briefly, our position is we encourage you to speak to us openly. We understand that you may not feel able to speak to us openly, and in that case, you can speak to us in private and in confidence. Now, there are some legal reasons why, if you say certain things, which we explain in the privacy and confidentiality notice, we may need to pass that information on to another organisation, for example, the police. But as far as we are able to comply with those legal obligations, then we will be able to keep things private and in confidence. And again, you can see the detail in the review. Ultimately, if there's something important that needs to go in the report, one way that we may deal with it is by talking about things in a way which we make anonymous so that no one could see what it was that was being said. But you can see that all of this is quite difficult. We don't want it to be a block on you coming forward. If you're worried about it, have a look at the privacy and confidentiality notice. If you're still worried about it, I would suggest that you email us on that private email and say, look, I've got something I'd like to come forward with. I'm worried about privacy and confidentiality. Can I just chat that over with you first before I say any more? Because we don't want anyone to be at home worrying about it and uncertain. And I think probably dealing with that this morning, that's the best way to think it through. Anything else?
Yes, so another question that's come through Fernando is, what if someone mentions something that they've witnessed but not challenged? Will they be punished, or will there be other consequences for them?
That's a really, really good question. So we don't have any power to punish anyone or sanction anyone or take any steps. The only thing that we are able to do is write the report and publish the report. Now, if you've seen something and you didn't feel able to challenge it at the time, that's completely understandable, you know, and it's a very, very common experience. And we would very much like people who have seen things, who are in one sense able to give a degree of objectivity about what they saw, to come and tell us about those things. We certainly won't take any steps, and again, it would only be in the context that I've described and which is set out in the privacy and confidentiality notice that we would feel obliged to tell anybody else, but we wouldn't be able to take any steps ourselves.
And then another question that's come in, Fenella, is whether you will be reviewing promotional processes.
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So we are certainly looking at some written documents which relate to disciplinary processes and grievance processes. And if we think that promotion processes also need to be looked at in terms of the documents, then that is something that we can arrange to do.
So we're just trying to keep up on the questions.
So further question, if statements are made by the service or by individuals, will the customer review team seek to test the veracity of those statements?
Yes, if somebody tells us something, then one of the things which I am interested in doing is investigating that. And that might be to find ways to see whether it's correct or whether it's a misunderstanding, it's a mistake. I am keen to understand what's happening in the service and what has happened in the service as best as possible. And that means that just saying something might not necessarily be enough. I might think either that I need to check whether it's correct, or it also might be something that makes me think, maybe we need to think a bit more about that aspect of the service. So there are a big variety of responses that we may have to something that you say, because we are keen to make sure that we've got a really thorough, really comprehensive understanding of what's going on. We're hoping that we're not just going to be skating on the surface. We want to be able to look at everything really, really carefully.
Now, Fenella, there's been a couple of comments here about being asked to share good experiences and being told what to say in relation to that, which doesn't sit well with people. Perhaps you can explain why we've mentioned good experience, bad experiences, and any other issues, experiences or concerns.
Well, there are lots and lots of reasons why I want to hear about good experiences. One is that if I'm going to understand the service, I need to understand everything. And if there are good experiences, I really, really want to hear about them, because those are things that I want to encourage, I want to promote, I want to make bigger and more important. And so it's really, really important that if you've got good experiences, that you come forward with them. An email about them would be great. And obviously I appreciate that maybe sometimes it's easier to talk about a good experience than a bad one, but I really would emphasize that this is not just coming and worrying about things that may have gone wrong, but very much I want to understand everything, and I want to understand about everyone's experiences. So please do tell us about the good things, and we're very happy to talk to you about the good things, have emails about the good things, but it's vital for us to hear those things so that we can understand and so we can encourage and promote them, because one of the things that the report will do is make recommendations, and I would like those recommendations to include, and this is entirely what's in the terms of reference, an account of what's working well, and encouragement to do more of those things. It's not only going to have a focus on things that might not be going so well. And perhaps this is a good time to emphasise that I'm coming to this review with a completely open mind. And I just want to see, hear, listen and understand what's there, and then be able to think about it really objectively. And that's why good experiences and hearing about good experiences is so important to us. Now, if someone is saying to you, oh, well, you must tell them about your good experiences, ultimately it's always going to be a matter for the individual what they want to do. But certainly I can say from my perspective, as the person who's going to be writing this review report, I am just as interested in a good experience as I am in one which someone feels is not so good. And they're all information is really, really important to me. So please, let's have that information.
So we've also had a question about the process prior to publication. So will the draft report or whenever be shared with anybody else from the fire brigade, including service managers, before the conclusion of the report, or will the report be kept to the review team until conclusion of publication?
So the law that governs the publication of reports of this kind provides for a process whereby if something negative is to be said about a particular individual, then that individual should have a chance to respond to that before the report is published. And it's also normal within these legal frameworks to have what is often called a factual accuracy check. So again, if there is factual information, then that needs to be checked with whoever is able to provide that checking before it's being published. So it is true that before the report is finally published, there will be those kinds of checks, but they won't be an opportunity for people to try and influence my conclusions. Now, I'm just going to check, because we have got some in-person attendees, and I'm just going to check if there's a question there.
My question is in relation to retired and past employees. Obviously, this is an in-service live stream, so everyone within the service is aware this is going on. Has there any consideration been given to colleagues that have retired, are they aware that they have a voice, I assume,
No,
in this review?
That's a great question. So just in case that hasn't come through clearly, I'm being asked about retired people or people who are ex-employees of the service and how we're going to involve them. Well, first of all, we very, very much welcome input from people who've retired or left the service for any other reason, or indeed members of the community or people who come into contact with the fire service professionally. We are certainly expecting to hear from those people. We very much welcome their views, and we have already been trying to reach out to that group through wider social media to make sure that they know that we are here and that we are interested in hearing from them. And certainly our experience so far is that people who are in those groups have already been reaching out to us. And so we are very, very keen to hear from those groups of people. We've been working hard to try and let them know that we're listening and we want to hear from them. And I think that's working a bit because we have been hearing from them. But certainly if you know someone that you think may have something to say, by all means you reach out to them and encourage them to come forward. But thank you very much for that question. That's definitely a group of people that, that we would be very keen to hear from. And again, good experiences, bad experiences, indifferent experiences, I've got an idea for how things could be better. All of those things we're very keen to hear.
Fenella, linked to that, there's a question here about how far back people can go with regards to disclosing or discussing concerns.
Well, we haven't got a fixed time for that. I mean, I guess in one sense we need to be realistic. I think what I'd say to you about things in the past is come forward with it, and if it's 25 years ago, then we might be thinking, is that something we need to look into? But we need to hear what it is in a way before we can make that decision. Certainly, in terms of looking at old disciplinary processes, we are going back quite a few years. So I wouldn't think to myself, I'm not going to look about how things have been changing in the service, how things have been improving, or how people have responded to problems in the past. We very much want to hear from the past, and I haven't got a fixed line and then we will think through where we need to go next with that bit of information to help us understand what's happening in the service. I think I've probably got enough voice and enough time for one more question.
Fenella, final question then, and we will come back on the other comments or questions at some point, but just in terms of time today, the final question, will you be using information relayed through the Crime Stoppers anonymous telephone line to inform the report? Yes,
we're really, really pleased with that initiative, which is running in parallel alongside our work. And it's been arranged that anything that goes in through the sort of Crime Stoppers route will also be passed to us. Now, I don't want to say that and find that everybody takes that route and doesn't sort of initiate talking to me. So although if you go to Crime Stoppers, it will get passed on to me, I would still very much encourage you to come through our email and come to us that way, or do both. So, that lots of you have been online this morning, which is really fantastic, and I'm really, really glad and grateful for that connection, and that lots of you have got questions. So for all the questions that we haven't had chance to deal with this morning, we're going to go away, and when we've finished our work over the next couple of days, we're going to put together a sort of FAQ document, because we know that some of these questions have been frequently asked, and we'll be able to post that on the Review's website so that you can see some answers. Now, if you've got more questions, ones you haven't been able to raise today, then again, by all means, please use that email address that we've set out today, and that you can also see on the Review's website to ask your question, because any kind of communication about the review, that's the best way to get in touch with us. So if you've got specific questions, and we can see that people have already been emailing us with questions over the last few days, we're very, very happy to deal with them in that way. So I'm going to say thank you very much again for joining the live stream, or if you're watching it and social media later on. Thank you very much for engaging with the review. We are really committed to producing a thorough and thoughtful report, and for us to do that, we need you to come forward, and we really, really encourage you to do that. So I very much look forward to meeting some of you over the course of the next few months. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Goodbye.